So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome all participants here in the auditorium, but also everybody participating virtually from home. Let me start by thanking the organizers of the conference for inviting me to share our thoughts, our experience with SCION technology at the SNB, but especially with the home office use case. It's, of course, always an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. Let me start with the short overview of our experience with SCION. As you might know, the Swiss National Bank has been working with SCION technology for quite some time. We started in 2016. In the meantime, we have already 3 use cases productive or in our productive environment. Since 2018, for the connection between Singapore branch and our SNB data center in Thüring, in order to get better utilization of the 2 existing lease lines, faster failover in the event of a line failure, and multi-path usage with distribution of different applications between or across the 2 lines. Then for the secure Swiss finance network since 2022, this is the one you probably know well. We have launched it together with our partners Swisscom, Sunrise, Switch, SIX, and of course Anapaya with the technology. An isolation domain for the secure communication between participants in the financial center, for the secure processing of payments, and the supply of liquidity to the Swiss franc money market. And last but not least, since spring this year, for our home office capability, to further strengthen our operational capability. This use case is now subject for my presentation, and I'm very glad that Elisabeth presented ahead of me, because that shows you how important it is that the environment is safe, secure, and every time, all the time, you are capable to operate. So, what were our requirements for a home office solution? First of all, the solution must be solid and secure, especially in our special role as the lender of the last resort. When others are not capable to operate, we still have to be capable in order to put finance into the system, put money into the system. So even in an extreme situation like a pandemic, we must be able to operate from home, or even some of our people must be able to operate from home. And as a secondary argument, most probably like all of you, we want to be able to attract young talents, new employees as an employer, and offer also home office. Then the solution should protect us from the dangers of the global internet. It must avoid communication loss between home office and the data center. For example, in the case of a distributed denial of service attack or BGP hijacking. And it must reduce exposure to security vulnerabilities on our devices and systems, that vulnerabilities cannot be exploited. And finally, it should also improve our resilience through reduction of the surface against global attacks, and by ensuring higher availability to preferring of multi-provider solutions. I will come to that. So if one can be reached globally, it comes normally with the global attack surface. 98% of our SNB employees working from home connect from a Swiss internet provider. Since the IP addresses of our remote access systems are known to the internet, our RAS systems, remote access server systems, were approached from every corner of the internet. I want to show you that based on a statistic from our remote access system logs from January 1st to January 7th. I'm always one slide behind. That's the problem. Sorry for that. So what you can see is actually that between 140 and 200,000 attempts to knock on our doors over this week. That means, so to say, port scans. Most of the attempts came from China, as you see in purple color, or from the United States in dark blue color. The next graphic now shows the countries of origins of these attempts, which were probably carried out with malicious intent. Between 400 to 2,500 such attempts were made every day during this period. More than half of the attempts, as you can see in blue color, came from the United States. Interesting for us was to learn that many targeted events against our system came from IP ranges used by the big cloud providers. And from the US cybersecurity agencies, we know that attackers are using the cloud providers as springboards to launch their attacks. Until January 9th this year, this was not really a problem for us. But suddenly, on January 10th, this became a very real and a big problem when the active exploitation of two zero-day vulnerabilities in Ivanti Connect Secure VPN became known. Because we use Ivanti Connect Secure VPN software, we had to patch our system and did this very fast within hours. And we did shut down the reachability via the global internet immediately. You might remember yourself, last year there were other VPN providers with that problem, with vulnerabilities. It's never 100% safe. So this is what happened to us, and it impacted our operational capability, of course. We announced our network only to the two major providers in Switzerland, so that employees working from home could still work via internet. On January 15th, 2024, it was announced that 1,700 Ivanti Connect Secure VPN devices were compromised across all industries globally. So fortunately, we have not been counted to the 1,700. So what were the technical options to reinstate a secure remote access? Common solution are GEO IP blocking on outer firewall in the SMB data center, or obtaining the service by a single security provider, or BGP advertisement limit by Swiss internet providers. Each of them has its shortcomings compared to our requirements. Let's have a short look at the solution to emphasize the specifics of our chosen solution. Let's start with the common approach of GEO IP blocking. Preventing attacks against systems can be achieved by blocking traffic from unwanted IP sources on country or provider level, and this can be done at the enterprise firewall. Disadvantages of the solution are attackers, they are right at your door, and you have direct DDoS risk, as well as vulnerabilities in firewalls and other front systems still create risks. So, to protect our own devices better, we could also have chosen a single security provider here in Switzerland. Such an offer from a security provider enables hiding enterprise systems behind the provider and is blocking traffic from unwanted IP resources at the provider edge. While such kind of solution exist and are effective, they were not acceptable for us because of the vendor lock-in. As the lender of the last resort, as I mentioned at the beginning, a vendor lock-in with a single vendor is not something we want to have. We cannot accept it, and therefore we want to have a multi-provider solution, because otherwise it would create a concentration risk for us. So these first two solutions depend mostly on the blocking feature against harmful attacks from the internet. Interesting is another approach which makes use of existing border gateway protocol routing features. This approach focuses on being invisible from most part of the internet, from where connectivity to us is not needed. Network become reachable after being advertised via BGP. Prefix distribution can be limited by adding BGP attribute, do not advertise any further. Because ISP set doesn't know about the existence of the network SNBX, there is no way for the attacker to attack the SNB. Disadvantages for us are the SNB has to set up a separate contract with ISP Switzerland 1, Switzerland 2, and so on BTP policy. And this is only effective due to goodwill behavior of ISP X, Y, etc. And no hard enforcement means no IP blocking of traffic. So, none of these solutions presented of the three fulfills our requirement, as I mentioned at the beginning, and effectively reduce the attack surface. Our chosen solution is therefore the gate service offered by the Swiss SCION Provider Federation. The federation was initially created, as you know, for the Secure Swiss Finance Network, so-called SSFN. In the meantime, the providers have built a separate Swiss SCION isolation domain. And the gate service from Anapaya is a bridge between the Swiss isolation domain and the public internet has been made available. So the essential solution elements of our chosen solution is a combination of all the elements. It's a reuse of the Swiss isolation domain offered by the providers. It's also SCION gate service as a bridge between SCION-controlled network and the public internet, limit prefix distribution by common BGP signaling, as I mentioned before, and IP blocking with whitelisting of only Swiss IP ranges at the gate service edge. Here we have all approaches combined. It's a combination of the three, and the advantages are avoiding unnecessary visibility and blocking traffic from unwanted global regions or sites, no vendor lock-in, and therefore no concentration risk, and the solution is offered and operated by not only one provider, it's at least two in Switzerland. So, what is the conclusion of our chosen solution? It's not really a genuine SCION-dependent approach, but it's pragmatic and efficient service offered by Swiss internet providers who expand their cooperation to more and more realm. And it's a combination of different elements that makes it strong. SCION is an inter-provider technology, as you know from the SSFM or the health network. It's about the collaboration between different competitors. Close cooperation between them is therefore very essential. And at least institutions and enterprises have to consider if a SCION-based multi-provider service would be of interest to them. For us, it met perfectly to our requirements, which I mentioned at the beginning. So there's still a bucket list. What else would we like to see from SCION? There are a couple of things which we think are valuable to talk about. One is the integration of smaller locations into the Swiss SCION provider coverage in order to reduce the attack surface against the global internet. For example, we are already testing that with the integration of our small offices, so-called economic delegates. Some of you might know them, the Wirtschaftsdelegierten in German. We have in each canton one person sitting in a small office working with the whole of the industry, with everybody. And these small offices we would also like to get connected via a SCION-protected network. Then also what we could imagine is a protected connectivity to national and international cloud providers like Microsoft or Amazon. And we are planning this in order to protect our connection between our data center and the big service providers, which should help us to prevent from DDoS attacks, from man-in-the-middle attacks, etc. And then also, I think last but not least, if SCION software interface would be available directly between the endpoint as laptops and smartphones, that would be a complete game changer, because then we could protect the application traffic between the endpoint, the client, and the server. So maybe before we come to the question, thank you very much for your attention. One question you might have, I like to answer by myself already and take it in advance. If for the good listener, or the very clever and good listener, you could argue, for example, that there's still one single point of failure within that solution we chosen. Of course, Anapaya is only the one vendor that offers the gate service, but at least it's in different instances productively. So there's more than one provider having an instance running. And on the other hand, we hope that the efforts that the association is putting in the open source version will have a priority to make sure that gets first implemented. Thank you very much.